welcome to our very first episode of IMPAKT TV. My name is Michelle and I'm sitting here with Inte, my co-host for tonight, and we are broadcasting live from the IMPAKT Center for Media Culture in Utrecht. For those who visit us for the first time online here, IMPAKT is a media arts organization focusing on the relationship between art, society, media and technology. We organized various events throughout the years, but also exhibitions, residency project and a yearly IMPAKT festival. But tonight we are here to kick off this new series, IMPAKT TV. With IMPAKT TV, we want to focus on current social events in conversation with experts and speakers. It is a monthly series, so every month you can tune in and expect interesting discussions about hot topics like conspiracy theories or how algorithms influence your music taste, or like tonight about NFT. So NFT stands for Non-Fungible Token and is basically a collectible item, a unique digital collectible item. We are hearing a lot about them lately, especially in the context of the art world, where they're shaking up things a bit. So tonight we want to ask, what are the opportunities, and will it enable artists maybe to escape the hype of the art market, or is it actually a way of reinforcing it? And so these are all questions that we will talk about with our special guest of tonight. And one thing I wanted to add is that tonight you will also be able to ask all your questions about NFTs. To do that, you can send them to questions@impact.nl or just type them in the YouTube chat. And now, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to my co-host Inte. She's going to give a further introduction. She's a researcher and a PhD student at the University of Utrecht studying blockchain art and design.
Thank you. I'm here, I think, to, in this introduction, kind of explain like, how did we get here? A little bit of history. Most of you are probably familiar with this image. The NFT craze really kind of reached mythic proportions in March when people sold this artwork for $69 million US. And it was really this amount alone that already created a big media hype. But I think that's kind of to be expected in an economic culture that really favors these kinds of stories of breakthrough miracles. That serve as an example, that kind of say, like, you too can make it now that NFTs are here. So I'm more interested, however, in what NFTs mean in a broader cultural context. The NFT hype emerged after a year of lockdowns across the world that hit the cultural sector really hard. Artists and galleries, collectors, audiences all had to find new ways of dealing with the cultural consequences of the pandemic. But what are NFTs really capable of? Do they benefit emerging, critical and niche artists as well as those kind of poster boys that we see in the news? What is their potential for reorganizing the art market in truly kind of radical ways? And to contextualize this current moment, as I said, I want to take you on a little history trip through kind of the blockchain history. So around the 2010s, the mid-2010s, blockchain saw its first kind of major hype cycle. And looking at what happened then, I think will allow us to recognize some interesting questions in the current moment too. So back then, startups kind of tumbled over each other to present the best pitch for the new undiscovered business model, business opportunity to kind of rake in venture capital to start their business. And also increasingly established institutions started to set up their own blockchain teams to make their transitions. It's a bit ironic because blockchain was kind of invented to root around those kind of centralized institutions. But all of this meant that the established centers of kind of economic and social power defined for a large part the meaning of a technology that was imagined to be a radical break with what came before. But soon also some people became critical of the fact that blockchain projects often reinforce power relations that were already present before. So any revolution that really excites the investor class, we can doubt whether it's really actually changing things fundamentally. So this is kind of the dominant narrative around blockchain technology. And this may seem like, to some, like reason enough to not want to have to do anything with it. But there was more happening also in the blockchain space. These critiques are also the basis of many projects that rethink what the blockchain could mean and do, going beyond the limits of the technology and beyond solutionist fixes. Many more interesting things have been happening around rethinking the art market already for quite some time with the blockchain. So to give you some historical examples, Plantoid was an art project, I think around 2013 that it started, which you can basically tip in Bitcoin, and it accumulates funds, which it then uses to commission an artist to make another Plantoid, and it kind of continues in that way. Another one, Bitcoin, which the artist Sarah Mayoas, she sold 25-inch squares of her work on the blockchain. These were still fungible, and she created kind of a collective ownership of her work and a stake in her artistic career also. So what I mean to say with these examples is that even though the dominant narrative tells us one thing of these kind of big capital gains by a lucky few, alternatives are also possible. We need to stay engaged with the technology to redefine what it can do. These projects don't propose easy solutions, but instead they actively engage with the critiques of the blockchain and to remold it into something that works better for more and different people. So, and if we move back to the current NFT moment that we're in, I'm seeing some similarities with the blockchain hype. It was when the established auction house Christie's jumped on the NFT train that the hype really reached the mainstream. Many other celebrity artists did their own NFT stunts to rake in massive sales. A Banksy piece was burned to make the NFT more valuable. But I think we shouldn't really be blinded by these stories, these big sales. NFTs have been around for several years already. You might remember the CryptoKitties, for example. But now that NFTs are in the spotlight, I think it's important to remember that there's not one single way to design NFTs and the platforms that they're traded on. So, for example, many people are working on reducing the energy usage of these technologies. That's something we need to think about. We can think about terms of ownership, thinking about ownership differently, or reward systems in different ways. Platforms can be set up to kind of favor a few big names, select a few big names, but instead they can also kind of really foster a community of smaller artists. That's all kind of design decisions to take. So right now we're also already seeing some people say that the hype is kind of reaching its end. And instead of settling with the rubble that this hype is leaving behind, I would say it's important for critical voices to keep engaging with NFTs and with blockchain technology to present alternatives and to have a foothold in the direction that the technology goes. I think NFTs could be an opportunity, but we have to ask the right questions, and I hope we can talk about some of these today.
Lots of interesting questions that we will discuss with the speakers. Let's introduce the first one of tonight, artist Simon Denny. He's live from New York. He's been closely following the developments in blockchain technology for years. And his latest work, NFT Mine Offset, was just shown at the Petzl Gallery. And he will shortly tell us about his practice.
Thank you. It's great to be here talking. I'm just going to run through a few things very quickly so that we can get into the discussion. But as mentioned, I've made a lot of art about crypto, about the people involved developing the technology and the claims that they make about what the technology does and the politics and the aesthetics around it. I have, this is an image of a show that I made at Gallerist in Cologne in 2018, which is a recent version of this. There's like board games on the wall, which are also collages of kind of political maps of major players and discourses that were happening at the time. And then there are these mining machines sitting on top of these sculptures as well. So I've done a bit with hardware and software and discursive things around blockchain. Most recently, I just opened a show, as mentioned, in Petzl Gallery in New York. This is an image of the install of it, which kind of connects the act of mining across different contexts. So this is actually a bunch of sculptures made of cardboard, which are depicting machines that mine minerals from the earth. Without these things, we wouldn't have the internet, and we wouldn't have the possibility to participate in this internet-enabled kind of data economy that we exist in. So data mining is, I guess, enabled by kind of real mineral mining. As well as that, there is so this is another angle of one of these mining machine sculptures, which also that actually. But I also released an NFT as a part of the sculpture and tried to connect also crypto mining and the world of the different contexts which are touched by crypto mining. So this is nftmine.com, which shows a couple of releases of my NFT series. I also launched this on the platform Super Rare to try and connect. So this is what it looks like on the NFT platform Super Rare, which is a marketplace among many where you can sell these things. Just to give you a kind of a rundown of my NFT idea and how it looked, it was a small video which described the story. So I bought a crypto mining computer, like the one depicted here on top of this rock, from eBay. These objects which mine cryptocurrencies, mine Ethereum, go up and down in value depending on how expensive the currency is at the time. So at the moment, where there's all-time highs in the value of mining ETH, they're really sought after, they're quite hard to find, and they're really expensive. So I bought one of these objects. I then worked with a illustrator that usually does kind of grade A illustrations for computer games, like first-person shooters and the like. I commissioned a kind of a portrait of this mining computer from him, a 3D portrait. So it then kind of spins on this video that I made to document the interaction. And then I used this computer not for crypto mining, which it was designed to do and sold as a secondhand version of on eBay, but instead donated it to a distributed climate prediction organization called climateprediction.net. So instead of mining crypto, it is contributing its power towards looking into how the world is changing and how our mining and different kind of things as humans impact the way that the Earth moves. So I guess my idea is I cheekily called it a crypto offset, a NFT offset, as you would kind of buy an offset to take an airplane. But really, it moves hardware, imagery, and ideas between different marketplaces. And I guess my thing is that NFTs and cryptocurrencies in general are really a lot about money. And so engaging in different marketplaces and kind of performing an alchemic gesture between contexts like this was what I really wanted to do for this work. So I will end my presentation with playing you the little video that was embedded in my NFT. Here we go.
So Simon, what really is interesting to me in what you're presenting is we've heard a lot of environmental critiques about NFTs recently. It's a hype in itself, and of course it's really interesting, really good to talk about that. But I like the way you're connecting that also to all these other technologies. That it's not on its own, but we have to talk about this in a much broader scale, and that's I think. What at least stood out to me immediately.
And we can't wait to talk about that with Simon and with our next guest, artist Haram Van Den Dorpol. In 2015, he was actually the first artist to sell an NFT to a museum, and afterwards he founded Left Gallery, and which is a marketplace for blockchain art. So Haram, the floor is yours. We look forward. He has to unmute himself.
I'm sorry, I was still muted. Yes. Thank you for the invitation. It's nice to be here in this room. Yes, indeed. I think I heard about blockchain in 2012 or 13 for the first time from people like Ben Vickers, and at that time it didn't really register for me because I was not so much interested in currencies, because that seemed to be something you can just pay with, and I didn't really see the creative potential in that. But it was in 2015 that I was invited to propose a digital edition. The invitation was by Cointemporary, which was then an online, well, not marketplace, but a place where you could buy one artwork for a certain time. Sometimes it was a painting, sometimes it was a digital work. And they had been in touch with a service called Ascribe, which was based in Berlin. And Ascribe offered a service where you could edition a digital work on the blockchain, and you could transfer editions to people. And this did register to me because I had been making digital art for quite a while, but often had the feeling that it wasn't really clear how to sell that, or how to commodify that, how to package that. Of course, when you have a digital artwork, you can put it on a hard drive and give a printed paper certificate when somebody buys it. But this seems really, really fascinating. And we had a presentation at the Museum of Applied Art in Vienna, and after the presentation, and during this presentation, we minted the artwork, which was a screensaver in an edition of 100. And after the presentation, the museum thought it was actually good for their collection to have editions of that work. So they purchased, I think, about 20 editions. And we then realized that that might have been the first time that such a thing happened. The museum paid with Bitcoin, but also they received tokens. We didn't really call them tokens at that time. I think the term NFT came a bit later. but this made it kind of historical. And let's see, I think I'm at my last slide. Let's see if I can navigate. The navigation doesn't seem to respond. Yeah, that's the first one. That was just my intro, like, hi, I'm Harm. I'm an artist and software developer. This is my website. Let's see if I can go to the next slide, please. My controller here doesn't work anymore. But anyway, I'll just continue to talk. So I was really surprised and happy about being able to actually sell digital art in such a way. And I figured that all the other editions also eventually sold out. So I sold 100 editions of a digital artwork. And I figured that could also work for other artists. And I also wanted to have that repeated for other works by myself. So I started then an online marketplace called Left Gallery in 2015. Gradually, the service that we used to scribe stopped existing. So I migrated the so-called the tokens to an Ethereum smart contract, and gradually, on the one hand, the marketplace was quite successful, and we got a lot of visitors. We also had sales, but gradually, people became less and less interested in the tokens, and it seemed that the big promise of NFTs that we were so excited about kind of disappeared until, like you said, in March. Suddenly it exploded. It was as if I woke up and the thing that many people had already worked on for a long time and people had advocated for and researched, and a lot of crypto art had been made, but it was not really recognized or seen. And now suddenly a whole new generation of people were putting all these, well, in all humbleness, these extremely ugly 3D renders and rainbow and unicorn images of template art that suddenly sold for a lot of work, and I didn't know what to make of that. And it took me a bit to adapt or to adjust and to find my initial point of view, like why was I in it in the first place, and why had I also lost interest, and why did other people lose interest, and why suddenly was it now so extremely popular again. Left Gallery sells blockchain ascribed works. It also sells digital artworks that are not blockchain ascribed. This is for the reason that the transaction costs of the blockchain have gotten really high. And with Left Gallery, we always had this ideological idea that art would be interesting if art would be affordable and kind of cheap. Well, cheap in terms of affordable. And sometimes the transaction art costs are so high, so we have actually very many different kind of works and different editions, different prices, and also some are on blockchain, some are not. This screenshot is a work of mine that I made after I encountered the possibilities of writing smart contracts, and I connected that with genetics. So I stored the genome of an artwork with genetic algorithms on the blockchain. That sounds really abstract. A little later, also CryptoKitties emerged. Let's see what the next slide was. These are some physical objects in an exhibition, actually also curated by Simon Denny, and the work in the background on the screen shows the entire population and the breeding process in this genetic algorithm, and the works on the left and the right side are material manifestations of that. I would call them the frozen artworks. So that would be an actual blockchain artwork, not so much an NFT, but it's maybe to show that you can make art with blockchain. But there has already been a lot of work by many people since maybe 2012, 13, 14, for quite a while, figuring out the potential and the possibilities of this technology. And I think quite often these people who have been active in this space, even people much more involved than me, now look at the current NFT moment. So maybe sometimes a bit feeling that they wished the recognition would have been there a bit earlier. or the adoption. But I guess that is always with really cutting edge technology. I think that was my last slide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, both of you, Simon and Haram, for the very interesting introductions to your work. For the people watching, if you have questions, please ask them at questions@impact.nl, and we can take them. Meanwhile, we also have a lot of questions.
Yeah, I mean, maybe to kind of continue with Harm, what you were saying, I think it's really interesting that you are kind of present as an artist, but also as a gallery or some kind of new entity in this space. That I'm wondering. We talk a lot about the individual files and what they mean and how they can be shared and those kind of things, but what is the role of those kind of galleries and collectors? How do they function in this space? How does this change from what was before for you as Left Gallery, but maybe also broader?
Yeah, I never wanted to be a gallerist, and I think I'm not very good at it. But this was really coming from just not being able to find a format for certain works and just stumbling upon, hey, it's just possible to do this. So it was an experiment, but it has also always been real. So yeah, we called them downloadable objects, because this comes also from this idea that. And this is actually kind of similar to what Simon says, the alchemy between like hardware, software, or immaterial things. They always need some kind of stratum or energy. And for me, files and digital art has always been as real and actual as like a painting or something like that. And I think I've always been fighting against that. When you're at a birthday party and you say you're an artist, they ask, "Oh, you paint?" You say, "No, I use genetic algorithms and I." So.
Yeah, maybe I can go to or you if you want to.
Yeah, question from the audience, which is actually for you both. It is a question from Jens Olsen. He asked if there is a catch, or the catch is that there is one owner, but what can one do with their ownership? Simon, would you like to react first about the ownership?
So, I mean, I'm going to fill out what I assume to be the context for this question, which is that when people buy NFTs now using the current mainstream marketplaces that are available to do so, I think some people get confused about the fact that you pay for something that it says on this registry that you own it, but actually it seems that anybody can do anything with the image or file that is supposedly owned by the person who bought it, which is true. And this is a very interesting situation, which is really interesting that there seems to be a demand to want to kind of pay for that without so much upside for owning, because you can, as pointed out by the question, you can kind of do what anybody would do with the image, which is supposedly the object that you're buying, or the file that's embedded in there, even if you don't own it. Now, that's a bit different on some marketplaces that have existed in the past. I think even Left Gallery has some differences there. But for me, I think, like the context of the current moment and the interest in NFTs is really all about money and all about legitimizing people who have a lot of crypto wealth who are invested in the crypto situation. So, like, maybe to return to some of the things that Harm hinted at, and to bounce off this question, the question is, like, who benefits from paying a high price for an NFT today, I would say, and why is this different than yesterday? And I think that the people that benefit from paying a high price for an NFT today are people who are already heavily invested in other types of crypto infrastructure, who want to expand the visibility and influence of crypto-led infrastructure on the web and beyond. And so therefore, basically creating another market by spending something that was probably very cheap for them to buy, i.e. some type of cryptocurrency like Ethereum or Bitcoin many years ago, which is now, again, in theory, worth a lot more, then does a lot to draw attention to other types of crypto infrastructure and get more people interested in the gold rush of potentially having access to that type of wealth yourself. And I think that's the main difference between now and before, is that the people who are deeply invested in this are willing to spend things that look like a lot of money, that kind of are a lot of money, but they probably didn't pay a lot of money for right now. And I don't know, I'd be interested to hear what Haram had to say about that as well.
Yeah, and I would say also from his role as a gallerist, maybe he can also tell us who's benefiting from from the NFT, and is it possible to that the artist might be the one that benefit?
Well, I think if I go back to the initial question of what is actually being owned, that was the question, right? Like, when you get an NFT, what do you actually own? And I think this question was there before there were NFTs. We had that question too, with files, with digital media, with digital art that existed in an edition that everybody can just freely copy. It was this big question that actually gave rise to NFTs. So it's not now that we have invented NFTs and now suddenly we have this problem of what do you actually own. No, I think NFTs were kind of invented to experiment with what it means to own something. There's this anecdote, and I'm getting old. I'm starting to repeat my jokes, so maybe I already told this once. But there's this story where hackers break into the wallet of the Louvre, and they steal the NFT of the Mona Lisa. And then the morning after, they call the Louvre and say, "Hey, we have the NFT. Can you now send us the painting, please?" And I think this illustrates that ownership with it's almost like a metaphysical question. So I think somebody once defined ownership as being allowed to destroy something, to burn it. But I think like artworks that have such important cultural or societal value aren't even allowed anymore to be destroyed. So maybe it comes down to, with all currency or value, is ownership is basically what other people trust it to be if it would be resold or retraded. Then your other question was, I think if I remember rephrased correctly, if this is in the benefit of artists. And maybe you could rephrase your question. Sorry.
Was also in a reaction what Simon was telling of and asking, actually aloud the question, who is benefiting from the NFT? And if I'm rephrasing Simon a bit, his answer was that it's especially the people that already have an interest in cryptocurrencies. So can we also think of artists benefiting?
Well, I can answer that for myself. I think I used to be, like a long time ago, be in surf clubs, and we would be publishing digital assets like images or videos, and we made those to be online. We made those to remain digital assets, and we believed that they were strong enough not to be materialized, not to be hung on the wall, and never really was there a way, at least for some of my works, like an animated GIF. You're not going to sell that in a gallery, and suddenly with this technology, you can trade it in a kind of clear way, and you can add a price tag to it. And I think that's interesting, and that allows new kind of work to be traded. That would be an answer.
Do you think that also, like, of course, right now we're seeing these massive sales, but what you were talking about in your presentation, Haram, also is this, that with Left Gallery you wanted these small and like editions of 100 and like affordable art. Do you think that, like, over time, that's the benefit of NFTs to do that, rather than what we're seeing kind of in the headlines right now?
Well, currently, it depends a bit on the blockchain that you use, I guess, because the Ethereum blockchain has gotten so expensive that for large editions, it's harder. There are a lot of new initiatives, also more, based on proof of stake, which have a much higher capacity to have many transactions and are also environmentally friendlier. Yeah, how can I say that? No, I'll give back to you.
Well, maybe then we can make the bridge to the kind of maybe elephant in the room is the environmental question. That I've been reading a lot about this, and Simon already also focused on this energy use in the mining and all these kind of infrastructures connected. Blockchain is as material as the next technology, even though just like the internet, it seems kind of nowhere ever. So you mentioned proof of stake, Harm. People are trying to design kind of their way out of this heavy energy use. There are also downsides to that. It's more centralizing. Maybe the additions have to be limited. Those kind of consequences. What do you guys think of what are promising directions for this this problem? Are there any? I mean, maybe not.
Yeah, I think it's still quite a new technology. And from the start, when proof of work, which is the algorithm that powers Bitcoin and Ethereum, it's wasteful by design. That's just how it works. And it's not necessarily even only the amount of energy that it uses that is large, but it's also the bandwidth of the network, the amount of transactions it can handle. It's not enough for this to grow. It's also too expensive. The transaction costs are too high. So it's not. It's like the people who are working on Ethereum, and they know that this has to change, and people are working on this. And the prospects of Ethereum moving to a much eco-friendlier solution. The Ethereum website promises it to be next year. We have to see. There are many other blockchains which are based on this other algorithm proof of stake. So that could already be used. So I'm quite optimistic there. But I think the transition to proof of stake has to happen, or other solution to fix this before it can really be a large sustainable solution that anybody can use with regard to NFT and other blockchain applications.
Yeah, I think also the Bitcoin maximalist or the proof of work enthusiast answer to this question, which is worth considering in the discussion, is that everything takes energy, and this particular type of what is usually seen to be a wasteful way of doing something. People who believe in Bitcoin in the way that it will always be proof of work and will always be as expensive as it is environmentally, say that is worth paying for, because you essentially get something for that cost. You get the lack of trust that is supposedly kind of given by the blockchain structure. So they argue that it's not wasted energy, it's used energy on a problem that otherwise would spend energy elsewhere. So, they often say how expensive is it to have people working in clearinghouses in banks? Do you ever cost that in an energy price? Probably not. Whereas now you can do that in a proof of work thing where you have an energy cost, which is there's a metric for that in the system. You can critique that argument, but I think it's worth putting it on the table because there are these people that claim that the waste is not in fact waste, but the use of energy. I don't know what Harm would think about that, but I've heard that from many people who are deeply invested in Bitcoin.
I am not deeply invested in Bitcoin. No, I am on the one hand worried about waste of energy, but then I think practically for me it means that yes, I'm still using Ethereum, and yes, I'm hopeful for it to move to proof of stake soon. But I think what it offers now is indeed there's no real alternative right now that has the same adoption. I think there are many wasteful things that we do, like taking an airplane to a tropical island. And I think for now, everybody should make those decisions on a personal level, comparable to do I eat meat or not? It's better not to. But if there would not be an outlook on an adoption to proof of stake soon, I might have not continued to use blockchain. I don't know. So I don't know if indeed the idea that Simon put on the table, that it gives us as much value as actually what this energy costs. Right. I don't know, because also it's not just the energy, but also it doesn't scale. It gets too slow, and the amount of transactions that we need, we can't do it with the technology if it would not develop further.
But you're raising also another very interesting point, because this kind of transition, of this kind of change that we have to make, are these things that we have to take on an individual level, or do we need like a push in that direction?
Yeah, like I said, I'm really optimistic about the new technologies that are being developed right now, which will solve most of these problems. So at that moment, people will, when there is this new blockchain that is just faster, cheaper, and cleaner, then people will start to move there. So that would be the push, I guess.
So it will bit like happen by itself as technology develops. Do you agree, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there's people that I don't think there's anybody that doesn't want that who's involved. So I would maybe rephrase it to say that it doesn't happen on its own, but the incentives are aligned in this situation with everybody who's invested in it. The people that build it, the people that use it, the people that run it, they want it to be cheaper, better, faster. So that is something that everybody in the game wants and nobody doesn't want. To the question of whether individual choices should be governing our response to energy use in general, I usually come down on the side of that these should be more centralized structural decisions rather than individual ones. And I think I saw a graph the other day on Twitter, I don't know where from, so it's completely unsubstantiated, but a graph that showed that even with all the heavily reduced commercial travel and power usage from the COVID-19 of the past year, there was a tiny, tiny dip in global energy usage, and something to that effect, to show that actually the level of personal choice and the impact that it has in these situations with regard to energy usage and impacts on the planet are actually the tip of the iceberg, and any significant change has to come from industry-wide, governmental-led, even larger gestures towards different ways of doing things that are not about individual choice. So I tend to feel that it's more realistic to think beyond the individual level.
And how does that work in the blockchain space? I mean, also Ethereum has been saying that it's gonna move to proof of stake for a long time, right? And it's still not doing it.
So yeah, but that's not because they don't want to. It's because it's a difficult technical problem.
Yeah, and I think also for some people involved, there's the issue of becoming more centralized. There is some kind of purists that don't think that's a good thing to do. So that there's
Right, that's why you have Ethereum Classic, right?
Yeah.
And these forks of people who want to keep developing the system and other people who want to hold on to the benefits that they see from the existing system. And an interesting thing about blockchain, which is kind of unusual, is you can have both. I don't know how Harm feels about that, but
About these forks, you mean?
yeah, the fact that like actually one of the interesting things about the way that these systems are designed and the way that projects kind of continue is that there can be alternative timelines, and significant groups can split off and do it the way that they think is best. So if there's a significant group of people who think that the supposed centralization sacrifices you make in a proof of stake system are too much to compromise the idea, there are ways to continue on that path, right? But then there are people who want to continue to make, some version of Ethereum or blockchains in general, wider usage and all the things that Harm summarized, and they will continue to probably develop the main core stream. But there are these options to develop alternative communities, right, like within the same paths or parallel paths.
And how do you see, because it's interesting, this potential also really in the system built in to develop these alternative communities. And on the one hand, now we have this big hype. So how do these things relate? Do you think that now slowly, the new things will emerge? What kind of things? How do you see?
I think there's an enormous community of developers and researchers, and they have already been working in this space for a long time on many other things besides NFTs, and like consensus algorithms. That's rocket science. It's like super complicated mathematical stuff, and we have only been figuring out these things like a short time ago, and we don't even know who invented it. So it just feels kind of new. And now that NFTs are so popular, for whatever reason, it might have something to do with COVID, that people are bored, or that people have suddenly recognized that just because Zoom calls are real, an NFT is also real. I think the hype will also be over soon in a way, but something will remain, and we will have like new hypes in a while. But in the background, all these people have been developing, and all these systems of governments or alternative algorithms or universal basic income chains, or like all this stuff has been going on for quite a while, and this will remain. Yeah. I think I lost my point a bit.
I think it aligned very well with the question that we just got from the audience, from Richard Gravex. He's saying speakers think about it as another canvas for contemporary art, and I feel about NFTs more like collectible cards for fun. So basically, Haram, what you're also saying, something that will come and go, and in the background there will still be people working on it, but yeah, sometimes there is a hype and sometimes there is not. But then the question is, which can have art quality and get value in time? Do you have any thoughts? Is it something that has a potential to also have more for the long run, and maybe to create alternative systems or systems of collaboration? I don't know. What kind of more long-term things do you see?
Well, that's kind of the promise of a blockchain. It's immutable, so it's going to be forever, as long as people are invested in maintaining this chain, to keep it alive, to validate it. It is there, and that's the whole interesting thing, that it is long term by design, and that's the first time in digital history that we have achieved this immutability, and I think that just hits the core of the whole thing. Somebody is working on.
I think maybe something worth mentioning here is that, like, all art and all value in general is a social mechanism, right? It's created in a social way between humans, and money is supposed to price that, and blockchains are supposed to be a part of that system as well now, because it's a different way of presenting monetary value. That is more native to digital and has all these other things about it. But if people think something is valuable, if a group of people think something is valuable, then it is valuable. And that is so true with art, online or offline, NFT or MoMA. And, as long as people think that this is valuable, then it will be valuable. So I think the only thing in terms of permanence is a social term, is to say, will we value these things today as yesterday? And if they will be, then the energy and care to keep them will be maintained. Which I think aligns with a lot of blockchain thinking, which is all about social consensus mechanisms, etc. So that translated into technical ways of managing these things. But I don't know if you'd agree with that, Haram, but.
Yeah, I do notice among collectors of digital art who have digital works in their collection, and now they hear about NFTs, and I've been approached if I could retroactively tokenize their editions or their collections, and I find it very fascinating. Not only because it would be kind of a good application for NFTs, but also because it shows that without an NFT, they still have the feeling that they don't really know what they own or what they have in their hands, or it feels at least to them that they might lose it, that it's ephemeral. And NFTs maybe are not fully going to solve this, but it does help a bit for their trust.
But that's again kind of in some part that's technical, in another part it's kind of social, right? Like it's about agreeing on what is the standard for what a registry should look like and how it should behave. Of course, there are real gains in the fact that there are all the benefits that blockchain claims about being decentralized and etc. But at core, it is also that particular technical component plus the agreement that this is a standard that we all believe in or something.
Yeah, and in these conversations with collectors about tokenizing their collections, what I also found interesting is that they really wanted to trust me to do it for them, in the sense that they really like there to be a middleman or a gallery doing this. They are terrified of losing their private keys.
I have two questions actually, because it triggers a lot, and it's also a question that link up to questions that we got for the audience. First of all, how does NFT actually change the traditional role of the gallerist? You already mentioned a little bit trust. And another thing, because now we are talking also about really making sure and almost not really tangible, but like who is the owner. So it has also something to do with traceability. Which also makes me think that, and this is a question that comes from Arion about blockchain and privacy, because blockchain could potentially also become a super surveillance system, because everything is traceable. So could you react on trust versus tracing and surveillance?
Well, actually, I don't know if it's cool if I speak first on this, but yeah, I have actually, there's an interesting thing that relates to both questions, I think, about the role of galleries and whatever, plus this privacy and maybe transparency issue, if I would, add that into the mix. So privacy is sort of the same conversation as transparency, like how much do you publish, what is visible to whom, and what can you keep back? And information and the role of keeping information is a very important part of like the way that the current gallery-based art market that I'm a part of works. And I noticed immediately when I had so I launched my NFT at the same time as having an exhibition in a gallery, and I worked with the gallery that I've worked with in this kind of mainstream art market world to do this, and I wanted to kind of experiment with that. And what was really different about the NFT is that everybody can go and see on the blockchain who bought it for how much money, and that in the art market normally are things that you hide or you can hide, and that you use that as informational currency to maneuver through and select who you want that information to have, which is a type of social currency, right? So in order to know who bought something for what, you have to be part of the club, or you have to be part of the transaction, or you have to have particular relationships. And that is an attractive thing for people in the art world that I grew up in, selling in the gallery system, which exists at the moment. And the transparency of that actually undercuts that currency on the NFT and on the blockchain. So, and I noticed myself that it made me a lot more nervous about offering work, because I generally, if I have an exhibition and I sell nothing, there's not a lot of reputational cost, because I can just budget. I can just say, it did really well, I had a great time, it was really worth doing. And if you have an NFT offering where you know exactly who bought it for what amount, you cannot do that. So everybody knows how much it sold for and when and to whom. And there's no way to kind of work rhetorically or socially with this informational or reputational cost. So that's one interesting thing that I noticed by being involved in both systems. And something that actually makes me hesitate to use NFTs as an artist, because I like having this control over who has what information. And like I mentioned before, it's like it is a type of currency in itself.
That's really, really interesting. That this exactly at the same time, this double experience.
Yeah, I also would say related to that, there's been a lot of celebration of kind of cutting out the middleman in the NFT narrative as well, and generally in the blockchain narrative. And I have to say that it's fine to cut out the middleman, but the labor involved in that middleman does has to be done by somebody, right? And of course, if I can gather all the capital for that and create my own infrastructure for it, and have people to do the things that the middleman did for a cheaper price, where I'm able to get more benefit in general, more upside goes to me, that's great. But I think oftentimes a lot of these things get left out. Like finding a buyer is not easy. Finding a context to make sure that what you're producing is valued in the same way, or in an equivalence way, or in a satisfactory way in another context of where it's going, as you want it to, is work, and it's hard to do. Producing context is work, and I personally don't have time to do all of that, and I am very happy with my middlemen partners who have a different skill set and a different thing that they do all day, which does that for me and takes it off my plate. Obviously, I pay a high price for that. I pay 50% of my profits for that, right? Which some artists are able to negotiate differently, but most artists, that's the general standard. But I think this is ignored too much. This idea that the middleman does nothing, that they just kind of stand there, getting in the way, taking money. That's not true. There's a service performed there that I particularly want. Somebody has to do that service, and I'm willing to renegotiate who gets what for what, and maybe this is an opportunity to do that. But I still really appreciate all that work that is real. And again, in my own estimation, selling NFTs, I think you still have to seek and find a buyer for most artists. It's not that the open marketplace suddenly produces immediate wealth the minute you kind of launch or mint an NFT. No, actually, there's social work finding the people who value it and making sure it transfers in a way at a price which you're happy with, which you have more control over in these other systems. So I'll stop my monologue now. But
this is an extremely interesting topic, actually. Haram, would you like to react on that also with your experience?
Yeah, I agree, because I think galleries are not the same as marketplaces, and I think left gallery is also a bit in between a gallery and just infrastructure, I think, and that a place like Foundation is even though it's not a complete open sign up, many people are on Foundation, and it shows in the selection. It's a lot of different pieces. It's not really curated. There's a sense of curating who gets on it, but not in the work. There's not really a direction of the work. So I think a large part of what Foundation does, it allows people to mint NFTs and sell them. They're not that much of a gatekeeper, and I fully agree with Simon that also what galleries do is they only represent a few artists because they think these artists are really good, and they develop these artists and they filter the complete offer of artists, and they say, these artists are worth working with. And I think that also explains, again, in my humble opinion, that a lot of the NFT art offered is just artistically or conceptually not very strong. Or maybe I have another way of appreciating art, but I think a lot of it is really based on templates for 3D software, or it's more. I think for a lot of NFT art, the artists are basically the people who programmed 3D Studio Max.
Exactly, and what I would say to that is that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, it's like 3D Max illustrators are fabulous, and I also don't want to take the title of artist away, but it's a different thing. It's just a different conversation, and the type of conversation that I want to have involves other elements which are not present in those conversations mostly, as far as I can tell. So I think Harm is right that it's about producing context and saying why, and then coming together over what you value. I mean, that's what art is all about. Art is an experience of connecting to people and figuring out what is valuable and treasuring that, and putting effort and time into kind of an experience that captures something of that feeling, and that can be done in different ways for different communities, and that's perfectly fine, But I have a community of people that connect with in this way, and there's a new set of infrastructures, like Harm mentioned, which is a marketplace in many cases. But the social work of creating that value space is the added value of my interaction with art, which is labor that's not being done by some of these marketplaces in the same way.
I also, what I find fascinating about most NFT marketplaces is that they, in their description, they say that they offer a platform for creatives and makers and digital creatives, and like all these terms. And I think that maybe people who call themselves this, like a digital technologist or something, a creative technologist, they might not have always had access to the institutional art world, which values things like the concept or context or history of art. And people who were not working in the institutional direction, if you can call it like that, or like the efflux canon or something like this, they were excluded from participating in this institutional world. So they would never be able to show their 3D rendered works. And suddenly they can, and because these gatekeepers have been taken away. But for me, it has allowed maybe a different genre to also take a lot of media attention, and that's great, and that's amazing. But it maybe just be something else, and it should also be judged with different terms, because it's I think a lot of the NFT art, it's like catchy, it's a lot colorful, it's kind of short, it's cool, it's kind of young, and it's just different genre. I guess genre is not the word, but worlds, or
But that's exactly. For me, this is really a core part of the discussion. Like we kind of arrived here as a maybe like maybe not you two, but a lot of people maybe that are listening as like, oh my God, what is happening? NFTs are here. What is an NFT? But actually, they can be many different things, and actually we should design for many different kinds of communities that have different needs, and big artists that we've heard about in the news a lot, they, you know, they have their middleman still. Like, it's not like they just click mint and whatever. There's people driving this for them, and you guys are a particular kind of a part of an artist community that has particular needs. Then there is people that are really into the more the collectible side and the kind of you know, Decentraland kind of virtual world aspect of it. That is a particular thing. So we have to kind of tear it all apart and see, you know, what are the different things that actually need to exist here. For me, that's a really major kind of thing that we need to be aware of in this space. Yeah.
Right, and like one community doesn't have to be responsible for all directions of the whole usage of this particular technology. That people can have this marketplaces and it's fine. And then I enjoy crossing contexts. I enjoy engaging in different environments. You know, one of the reasons why I decided to mint my NFT on Super Rare rather than something that is kind of closer to my own community is because I was interested for my artwork with different values, maybe coming from a slightly different place in terms of why it exists, to interact with this other context, right? Like that was part of what was exciting for me about doing an NFT, was like playing in this graphic arts context. But like Haram said, we've both been involved in our own ways in art using and about the blockchain for a long time in our own communities and in other types of interesting communities. And for me, with this NFT moment, it was like, oh, there's this whole kind of cinema 4D world. That's interesting. How do I engage with that in a meaningful way that is on my terms, but also potentially extending what I can learn, you know? So I think it's great that these different contexts exist and what they're doing. And I don't think any community has to be like a threat to another, you know? I think it's completely fine.
I agree. What I do feel though, because you have like the digital artists who have been digital artists for a long time and have been very serious digital artists, and they never sold art. And now suddenly you have these people selling unicorns for a lot of money. And then there's also the people looking at who built that infrastructure, who invented the token standard. They're not making a lot of money either. And then today, I think MIA made a token, and I don't know how much it will sell. And she has never been involved with crypto, as far as I know, and that's also fine. But it can be a bit painful for those people who were there early. So I guess it forces a sort of humbleness among digital artists that other people who make things who are not coming from this institutional background, that they also might be very popular for their content. So.
Yeah, I wonder if there's been parallels across other paradigms over time, you know, where like, you know, one community develops a particular, I mean, even not technology, but like a network or a system, and then other communities come in and translate capital from other spaces into that space. So like the MIA example is, she's obviously, you know, translating her Spain capital, let's say, or her notoriety scale capital into this other type of capital, which is of course something that the community developing NFTs don't have the visibility on, and you know, whatever. Like, I'm just saying there are these different exchanges and moments, and I wonder if this is a very unique moment in that way, or that there's always these kind of interchanges between time, opportunity, scale, visibility, and kind of capital or something. I don't know.
A lot of interesting question and food for thought, I would say. I think we can go on talking a long time. Unfortunately, our time for this episode is up, but we can continue talking later in the Zoom. But I hope the two of you are staying as well for some virtual drink after talk. I really would like to thank you both very much for all the insights, beautiful presentations, opinion, and everything, actually. So thank you so much for being at the first Impact TV episode. And then I would... And I would also like to take the opportunity to also thank a couple of other people that are very much part of Impact TV but are not in this episode. Arjan Dunnewind, Director of Impact, Rosa Wever from University of Utrecht, and Friso Wiersum, who are also part of the editorial board of Impact TV. And of course, all the people at home who have been watching. And now, because we still have a lot to talk about with NFTs, we would like to invite you all to our Zoom bar, and also let you know that the next event will be on the 6th of May, so you can put that one already in your agenda, and we can already tell that it will be about conspiracy theories. But for now, let's keep on chatting a bit.